Welcome to this episode of Sound Bites, a podcast series produced by the National Psoriasis Foundation, the nation's leading organization for individuals living with psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. In each episode, someone who lives with psoriatic disease, a loved one, or an expert will share insights with you on living well. If you like what you hear today, please subscribe to our podcast and join us every month at Soundbites for more insights on understanding, managing, and thriving with psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis.
My name is Max Blitstein, and today I'm excited to discuss the latest treatments in development for psoriasis with one of the world's leading experts in dermatology, Dr. Stephen Feldman. Dr. Feldman is a professor of dermatology, pathology, and public health sciences at Wake Forest University School of Medicine. He specializes in the care and treatment of people with psoriasis and other skin diseases and is active in clinical research for the development of new dermatologic treatments. Dr. Feldman is a former member of the Medical Board of National Psoriasis Foundation and in 2019 received the Foundation's Outstanding Educator and Psoriatic Disease Award. Welcome, Dr. Feldman. It's a pleasure having you back on Soundbites.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Max. Thanks so much for including me today.
Yeah, so before we start, I wanted to find out, why did you go into dermatology with a focus on psoriasis? Why the interest in this disease?
I think having had poison ivy as a child led me to I've been practicing over 30 years. I've never seen anybody with poison ivy as bad as what I had when I was a kid. And that probably contributed. But just the idea of being able to do research and see patients, dermatology seemed very, very suitable for that. That helped. And then I got hired at Wake Forest University to do test tube research mostly. They didn't really want me seeing many patients. They wanted me to focus on the lab. They only gave me a half a day a week, a clinic to do, Friday afternoon, of course. And after I'd been there a year, our awesome psoriasis specialist, Dr. Michael Zanoli, truly one of the greats, and he left. And I'd been sending all my psoriasis patients to him. And so the next day I became the psoriasis specialist for 3 states.
Well, that's amazing. We're so glad that you chose to treat patients with psoriasis. What key pathways do you see as being important in the development of new treatments for psoriasis or psoriatic arthritis?
Yeah, I've been blessed to have ridden an incredible wave over these past 30 years of new treatments for psoriasis. And our understanding of the immune system has led to new treatments, or maybe the development of new treatments has led to a better understanding of the immunology of psoriasis. It could work either way. There's over 100 genes that are associated with psoriasis. So presumably targeting any one of those genes could represent a psoriasis treatment. Early on, I had relatively non-specific treatments like methotrexate and cyclosporin that could make psoriasis better by turning down the immune system causing psoriasis. But those drugs would inhibit the immune system in relatively non-specific ways. Now we know that psoriasis involves interleukin 23 as a key signaling molecule in the immune system that activates immune cells to make another signaling molecule, interleukin 17. And that pathway goes through intracellular signals like TYK2, TYK2. And so this pathway is fundamental to psoriasis. And if you block this pathway, you can make psoriasis better. And if you can block this pathway without blocking other stuff, then you can have extremely effective and extremely safe psoriasis treatment. So this essential interleukin 23, TYK2, IL-17 pathway seems to be a real sweet spot for developing new psoriasis treatments.
So I've actually had psoriasis since I was about 10 years old and was diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis in my early 20s. I'm now 34. Over that time, I've tried and seen a lot of treatments released for psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. You mentioned interleukin 17. There's a lot of excitement about bimekizumab, which was released last October. In February of 24, bimekizumab received approval for the treatment of active psoriatic arthritis. Why is this latest addition to the biologics for psoriatic disease so important? And how effective is bimekizumab for both psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis?
We have several drugs that block interleukin 17 already, but there's different forms of interleukin 17, and 2 of the ones we have, secukinumab and ixekizumab, block interleukin 17A. Bimekizumab blocks interleukin 17A and interleukin 17F, and both appear to be important in psoriasis. And so bimekizumab seems to be even more potent for psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis than the existing treatments. Now, normally I'm not terribly excited about new drugs because I don't know what the side effects are going to be. And because this drug blocks more interleukin 17 than the other ones, you wonder what kind of side effects are we going to see?
Yeah.
The older interleukin 17A blockers have an increased risk of developing a yeast infection. So maybe the chance of developing a yeast infection is so low that maybe the tenfold increased risk gets you up to a risk of maybe 1 in 100, 1 in 50 with the older drugs. But the bimekizumab gets you another tenfold on top of that, roughly. And so maybe 1 in 5 to every 1 in 10 people will have a yeast infection. But if you have yeast in your mouth, you can take an anti-yeast lozenge, or you could take an anti-yeast pill if you're having a yeast infection in the vaginal area or something like that. So it's not that big a deal. The other limitation of IL-17 drugs is they seem to either cause or unmask inflammatory bowel disease, which psoriasis patients are at risk of in like 1 in every 300 people, roughly. Maybe it's 1 in 500. It's not common, but it happens. And I was worried that, gosh, you're blocking even more IL-17. There's going to be an even bigger risk of that with bimekizumab. Now, you mentioned that it was approved in 2024. And that's true in the United States. But the US FDA was slow to approve this drug. And I think it's been approved in Europe for 3 or 4 years already. And we haven't seen, as far as I can tell, any epidemic of inflammatory bowel disease. And so I think you do get added oomph without, other than the yeast infections, added much in the way of added risk.
So, Dr. Feldman, are there any oral interleukin 17 agents in development for treating psoriasis? Pills could be a lot more easy to take as a medication as opposed to injections.
Yeah, there is an oral interleukin 17 in development, and I imagine it's going to be very effective if it blocks IL-17. And I imagine patients are going to love it because patients will often choose an oral that is not nearly as effective as an injection just to avoid injections. My only concern is that inflammatory bowel disease issue, and I don't know how common it will be with the oral. I just worry that, gosh, if you see inflammatory bowel disease with the injectable, are you going to see even more of inflammatory bowel disease when you're delivering the drug through the bowels? It just remains to be seen. I'm in no hurry to use it in people who don't need it. In people who desperately need it, yeah, I'll be glad to prescribe it should it come to market. And then once I've had more experience with it, been around a while, we can make sure there aren't any unknown side effects. Then I'd be more likely to be thinking about it as more of a first line treatment.
You mentioned IL-23 earlier as an important pathway. I've heard there's also an IL-23 oral agent, J&J 2113, currently in clinical trials. Can you discuss how this treatment works and how effective it is as an oral agent?
It's hard to get me excited about new drugs and a lot of things in development for psoriasis and both the topicals for milder disease and systemics for the more severe patients. And nothing really excites me except for this new oral IL-23 inhibitor. And I say that because I just love interleukin 23 blockade because the genes for the two subunits of interleukin 23 are genetically linked to psoriasis. The gene for the interleukin 23 receptors genetically linked to psoriasis. It seems like you're getting at the root cause of the disease. The drugs, the injectable drugs that we have that block interleukin 23 for psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis, maybe even inflammatory bowel disease at some point, those drugs seem extraordinarily effective, especially in the long run. Maybe not be as fast as the IL-17 drugs, but in the long run, they seem exceptionally effective. And they seem to have little to no risk. Some of them are approved for the treatment of inflammatory bowel disease. So I don't have to worry about them causing inflammatory bowel disease. And they don't seem to cause yeast infections. They seem, hard to believe, basically, to me, completely safe. I mean, yes, there were adverse events in the studies, but you saw the same adverse events in the placebo group.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so that's for the injectables. Now, for them to come out with an oral, to have an oral that does this is not perfect. What would be perfect would be a no-risk, one-time cure for the disease. Okay, so we're not there yet. But to have an oral that has all the other characteristics of the efficacy and safety of IL-23 blockade is something I'm really enthusiastic about.
Well, that's great to hear. So, with the success we've seen of deucravacitinib, more focus has been placed on developing other oral TYK2 inhibitors. Do you have any updates on potential upcoming TYK2 or JAK inhibitors?
There are a couple other TYK2 inhibitors in development. And gosh, again, the gene for TYK2 is genetically linked to psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis, and inflammatory bowel disease. So blocking TYK2 makes a lot of sense. But blocking TYK2 doesn't just block the IL-23, IL-17 pathway. TYK2 is also involved in mediating the signal from interferon. And interferons are important for controlling viruses. And so when you block TYK2, with Sotyktu, deucravacitinib, you get a small increased risk of having latent viral infections pop up. So viruses from the herpes family, there seems to be some increased risk of this. Maybe like 1 in 100, which, gosh, 1 in 100 might actually sound scary. 99 times out of 100, we don't see it, which sounds better. And for shingles, there's a vaccination. And for herpes simplex, I mean, it doesn't cause you to get herpes simplex, but if you had herpes simplex, you could have a flare of it. There's a good pill, valacyclovir, great treatment for it. So pretty minor issue, unless some years from now we discover that after tons of people were treated, other worse latent viruses pop up. But so far, it looks very safe, and deucravacitinib seems to be about twice as effective as a Premolast or a Tesla. But I guess my concern is with the newer TYK2 agents in development, they may block more TYK2 than deucravacitinib does. And if so, hey, the good news is they could be even more effective. Deucravacitinib seems to be about as effective, more effective than etanercept Enbrel, less effective than adalimumab Humira in the short run, but maybe in the long run it would be comparable, because you wouldn't get anti-drug antibodies to it. And so if you could make a TYK2 inhibitor that blocks more TYK2, maybe you could get those higher levels of efficacy like you see for secukinumab, Cosentyx, or maybe the IL-23 blockers. But my concern is if you block more of that TYK2, you will be blocking more of the interferon, and maybe you will see more of a current virus signal. So far, the drugs look pretty safe, these new TYK2 inhibitors that are in development, but large numbers of patients haven't been treated for long periods of time. So I really don't know what the safety of those will turn out to be.
That is really good news to hear that more oral treatments are being developed to treat psoriasis. Biologics and newer oral treatments have really revolutionized treatment for many people with psoriasis, including myself. Are there any other promising injectable interleukin 17 or interleukin 23 inhibitors in development?
Yes, there's other interleukin 23 molecules in development. I don't know that they're any better than what we have, but people can eventually become immune to their treatment, probably because of anti-drug antibodies. And when that happens, it's nice to be able to switch. Currently, we have at least 4 drugs that block interleukin 23. We've got Tremfya, Skyrizi, Ilumya, and the older drug Stelara. It blocks IL-23 along with other things. So there's options to switch among them, and if new ones develop, we'll have more options for people who lose efficacy to a therapy. The other thing that's in development are biosimilars. We have adalimumab, a biosimilar for Humira now, and a biosimilar for Stelara, ustekinumab, is available. And on the one hand, I'm not terribly excited about them because they're not going to be able to help people I can't help already, because I can prescribe the branded Humira and Stelara for people. But on the other hand, patients who are on one of these drugs or the other, they ought to know about these biosimilars that are coming, because the packaging is going to look different. The cost to the insurer is going to drop, and eventually that hopefully will be translated into lower healthcare premiums. And the biosimilars should be just as good. They're similar to the originator products. Otherwise, they wouldn't make it onto the market.
So, biosimilars have been in development for a while, with a number being released lately for Humira, as you said. Are there any other biosimilars in development? You mentioned Cosentyx earlier, with the patent expiring in 27 and 28, and more biosimilars for Stelara. So, curious about that.
Yeah, so the biosimilars for Stelara are hitting the market already, I think. And the ones for Humira are already far enough along that insurers are telling me what they pay for. If a patient wanted to pay for the Humira out of their pocket, the tens of thousands of dollars a year, I guess they could. But the insurer says, we cover this other one, then pretty much we're going to go with that other one.
Yeah. So I appreciate that answer. I'm curious about what are resident memory T cells and how important is the development of therapies targeting resident memory T cells in the pathogenesis of psoriasis?
The immune system is so complicated that it is completely inscrutable, and it's really hard to predict from our understanding of the immune system what's actually going to happen in patients. The best example of that may be when IL-17 drugs were being tested. They worked for psoriasis, they worked for psoriatic arthritis, so we assumed that they would work for inflammatory bowel disease. And two of them were tested in patients with inflammatory bowel disease, and the patients did worse than the patients who got placebo. It was just totally unexpected. But then, after it happened, the gastroenterologists, the GI doctors, they came up with some theory based on the immune system. Oh, yeah, we should have known because it's important for the bowel barrier function or something. Look, the resident memory T cells are important, we think, because they will, once they're trained to cause psoriasis, they're going to keep causing psoriasis. And in theory, if you get rid of them, then maybe you could cure the psoriasis. And I think it's very reasonable to think that maybe if we give patients enough of these really super great psoriasis treatments that we have now up front in big enough doses to make those resident memory T cells disappear or at least forget about psoriasis, that we could induce a cure or at least a long-term remission. And
That would
that's,
be amazing.
yeah, that would be amazing. It'd be great. And it's a great theory and we should test it. But is that going to happen? Yeah, I don't know.
And Dr. Feldman, are there any new developments for topicals?
We've got a number of topicals that have hit the market, and there could be more topicals in development. The roflumilast foam is very safe. There's a cream version. There's the tapinarof is another non-steroid agent that's very effective for psoriasis. It's possibly has some remittive properties, although I don't know that we've compared it head to head to see whether the remissions are more than with other things yet. But I am not bullish on new topicals because of three things. Number one, patients aren't great about putting topicals on. Number two, patients aren't great about putting topicals on. And number three, patients aren't great at putting topicals on. Now, I've done studies where we gave patients topicals to put on and we put computer chips in the caps that would record the day and time they open and close the containers. And their use of the medicine drops really quickly. And the long-term adherence was so bad, so abysmal, that when we published the 1-year adherence data on use of a topical, a high-potency cortisone medicine, in the British Journal of Dermatology, the British Journal of Dermatology let us put the word abysmal in the title of the paper. So clobetasol is extremely effective at clearing up psoriasis, and it doesn't work if you don't put it on. If it's not working because you didn't put it on, then is the next topical going to work? I don't know. I don't think so. So, I would be more excited if a company came out with a pill that was safe and effective and low cost and approved for patients with mild psoriasis. I think there's much more unmet need for patients who have limited areas of psoriasis than for the people who are covered. Because for the people who are covered, we've talked about all these different products. It would be nice to have pills that you could use for people with mild disease. Otezla, Primilast, is approved for all psoriasis now, but it's not the most effective drug. It's got some annoying side effects. It's not particularly low cost, so it may not be the idea. I think it works about as well for mild psoriasis as it does for more severe psoriasis. If the patient's happy with it, great, but I think most people with really extensive psoriasis want their psoriasis to get a lot better. I think most people who come in with just a few spots on their elbows and knees or legs, they want them gone. I think women who have spots on their legs, you get those spots 90% better. They're like, I still got spots. I still can't wear a short dress. So it would be nice to have really highly effective, easy to do treatments for psoriasis. And the new topicals, yeah, if you'll use the foam, great. If you didn't use your clobetasol because you were afraid of the steroid side effects, yeah, these non-steroidals are good treatments. And use them well and to get the maximum benefit out of them.
It sounds like it. Any news regarding the A3 adenosine receptor piclidenoson?
Yeah, that's another pill option for psoriasis. And it's not one that I'm terribly excited about because it may inhibit the immune system in a more general way. It may have effects on the heart. I think you have to get an EKG when you go on this drug. I mean, I am so spoiled by drugs that block interleukin-23, even IL-17. Those drugs are so effective and so safe, and they don't do other stuff. Back in the 1990s, when all I had was methotrexate and cyclosporin, if you had told me, hey, I got a JAK inhibitor for you, like the ones approved for psoriatic arthritis, the Rinvoq, upadacitinib, tofacitinib, that's Xeljanz approved for psoriatic arthritis. If you told me you had those drugs back in the 1990s that affect the immune system and don't destroy your liver like methotrexate does and don't destroy your kidney like cyclosporin does, I would be ecstatic. I'd be like, oh, well, this is awesome. But now I'm anchored on drugs that are so safe, like IL-23 inhibitors, that are inhibiting the psoriasis pathway and then don't do much of anything else, that having relatively non-specific effects on the immune system are no longer exciting for me.
So we touched on this a little bit earlier, but we know people with psoriasis are at a higher risk of developing related conditions. Do you think it's possible to develop treatments that can address both, say, for example, diabetes and psoriasis?
Yes, I think there's some evidence that weight loss can make psoriasis better. It's not the strongest evidence, but I think there's drugs now that will help you lose weight and make your diabetes better. And I think those drugs may make psoriasis better too. Sometimes I wonder, though, if the studies where they put people on a really super low calorie diet and regiment their lives and show that there's weight loss and psoriasis gets better, if the regimenting of the person's life results in their being more compliant with their topical psoriasis regimen, and maybe that's why their psoriasis gets better. It's hard sometimes to tease out the behavioral effects from the effects of the drug.
So, thank you, Dr. Feldman. There are so many treatments continuing to be developed as we gain a better understanding of what causes psoriasis. Are there any other treatment developments that we haven't covered?
Yeah, one that I shouldn't miss. Ultraviolet light treatment. Before we had even methotrexate and cyclosporin, we were treating people with ultraviolet light. And it's a good treatment for many people with psoriasis. You can come to the office 3 times a week and get light treatments. And that's probably the least convenient and most expensive way of accessing light therapy. If you live in a place where you can get sun, that's another good option. The latest research work done by Joel Gelfand out of the University of Pennsylvania. Joel's an amazing researcher. He's done so much in the area of psoriasis, but he led a study of home light versus office light for psoriasis. And the home light worked just as well as office light treatment. And I think subjectively, it worked even better. Patients were happier with home light therapy than with office light treatment. And I think, man, if I was an insurer, I would strongly be trying to give psoriasis patients home light units just because a home light unit would cost far less than some of these awesome biologic treatments we've been discussing.
So, out of all the treatments and development we've discussed, which is the one that excites you the most?
Oh, I think that was obvious. The oral IL-23 inhibitor seems like number one, and an oral IL-17 would be a close second, especially if it proves not to cause too much in the way of inflammatory bowel disease.
Do you think it's possible for a cure for psoriasis to be found? And could treating psoriasis early in the disease process lead to a cure?
You know, I became the psoriasis specialist at Wake Forest in 1992. And when etanercept came out, I think around the year 2000 or early 2000s, I thought, I am never going to see another quantum leap forward like that again in my lifetime. And then there was Humira, which was more effective than etanercept, Enbrel, without much more in the way of side effects. And then I thought, okay, I'm done. And then Stelara came out. It seemed completely safe and more effective than Humira. And then you got secukinumab, Cosentyx, and Taltz, and then another quantum leap forward with IL-23 inhibitors, and now the potential for an oral IL-20. I mean, I think it's possible we will see a cure. I think treating it early or treating it aggressively enough with these drugs. Andy Blauvelt's been doing some work, giving people high doses of interleukin 23 and marry that with a little IL-17 and possibly something else. I think we might be able to, there's certainly hope. Yeah.
This sounds so promising for patients suffering from disease. Looking forward to the future of treatment for them. But I wanted to thank you, Dr. Feldman, for such an exciting discussion today. It's really good to be aware of what treatments are in development. This hits really close to home for me as I've taken quite a few of the medications we've discussed today. Do you have any final comments that you would like to share with our listeners today?
Yeah, I got one final comment for y'all, and that is a great way to stay on top of developments in this field is to be a member and use the resources of the National Psoriasis Foundation. Just go to psoriasis.org. Now, I know everybody listening to this already knows about the foundation, but the people who aren't listening need to know about it. So you might share this podcast, share information about the foundation, especially if you found it helpful, with people on social media.
Thank you again, Dr. Feldman, for providing such an amazing update on treatments in development and for being here today. And for our listeners, as Dr. Feldman mentioned, if you know someone who could benefit from listening to today's episode about upcoming treatments for psoriasis, please share the episode link with them. You can continue to learn more about biosimilars by contacting our Patient Navigation Center at education@psoriasis.org to receive a free biosimilars quick guide. And finally, thank you to our sponsor, Bristol Myers Squibb, for their support of the Soundbites episode.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Sound Bites for people with psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. If you or someone you love has ever struggled with psoriatic disease, our hope is that through this series, you'll gain information to help you lead a healthier life and inspire you to look to the future. Please join us in a couple weeks for another inspiring podcast. You can find this or all future episodes of Sound Bites on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Ghana, and the National Psoriasis Foundation webpage. To learn more about this topic or others, please visit psoriasis.org or contact us with your questions or comments by email at podcast@psoriasis.org.